I'm now a 41-year-old female, but when I was 20 years old, I attended college in Northeast Pennsylvania. I lived off campus and had a part-time job at the local mall. The mall was just over a mile away, and I would walk to and from work regularly. The mall generally closed at 9 p.m., and I would finish up my closing tasks and start walking home around 9:30 p.m. or 10 at the latest. Occasionally, I would get a ride home from a coworker, but most of them were high schoolers getting picked up by their parents. One night, I was walking my familiar route home. There are never many people out and about downtown until I got back onto campus, which I would cut across to get home. This night, I was only a few blocks from the mall, and I noticed a van parked next to the corner, but didn't think anything of it initially. There were always a smattering of cars parked around. The van appeared to be running, and the headlights were on. As I got a bit closer, I noticed the sliding door on the side was open. I definitely noticed, but assumed that someone must be loading something in and out of one of the local businesses along the street. As I walked past the van, there's a sudden flurry of movement to my left. There had apparently been a man crouched by the dumpster there, and he was running straight at the open van door. The scary part was that I was directly between him and the open van door. He was trying to shove me inside the van. I screamed, and I can only credit my complete awkward lack of coordination for what happened next. I tripped and stumbled when he surprised me, so when he hit me, I was already falling down to the ground. The force he hit me with only got my head and shoulders into the open door, while the majority of my body was outside on the ground. I remember he grabbed me around the waist and was trying to hoist me up through the door, but I was just discombobulated dead weight. He jumped over me into the van, grabbed a handful of my hair and started pulling me off the ground into his van. This is when headlights of a car turning down the street washed over me, and I could briefly see that this was a white guy in a black hoodie. When I saw the car, I screamed louder and started wildly flailing my arms. I heard their brakes screech, and then the guy let go of my hair. I jumped back and the hooded bastard slammed the door shut, and seconds later accelerated away. A cute little white-haired Polish woman had been in the car that turned down the road at the exact right moment to save me. She hugged me and told me I was safe, and it was then that I realized I was still screaming. She sat on the sidewalk with me and then walked me to her car. Cell phones were relatively new. Neither of us had one. She drove me to the police station and stayed with me while I answered questions and made a report. As far as I know, they never caught the guy. My housemate with the car let me borrow it anytime I was going to work after that, and I never walked downtown after that. I had nightmares for a while. I can't help but think what could have happened to me. Hello, my name is Alex, and here's my story. At the time, I was in my old bedroom, which was basically one of the smallest rooms in the house. I am now in a new bedroom. This one is way more spacious. My bedroom was about 5 meters by 5 meters. It could only fit a bed, 2 nightstands, and a dresser with a mirror screwed on top. It was in the basement. Now most of you guys probably think that the basement is dark, creepy, and eerie, but mine was not. My parents had made sure it was full of life as possible. They painted the walls, installed a gaming room, which I used often, basically making it really cool if someone in our family wanted to have a party there. Now the room I had, I think it was actually fair I had that one room, because before we moved houses, both my brothers had to sleep in a tiny bedroom, about 5 square feet large. Basically the worst, and I had the biggest room in the whole house. So at the time, we had 3 cats. One of the 3 was my favorite. I loved her and took care of her, and she made sure I wasn't depressed. Sometimes we would just let her go outside during the night, and I would let her go in sometimes when she scratched on my window. She still does this to this day. I was an insomniac, and I never slept well. My parents knew about it, so they decided to give me some melatonin pills to help me sleep. My window was on the top of my bedroom wall, which meant my cat didn't need to hop on any type of ledge to scratch her paws on it from the outside, letting me know she wanted to get in. It was a night that I decided to take some melatonin pills, which worked fantastically when I couldn't sleep. So I was literally about to sleep, like I was on the edge of dreaming, and I heard my cat scratch, or so I thought. I sighed, got up to move the curtains out of the way so I could let her in, but when I opened the window, I heard something move or step on the rocks around my window. At the time, I was too sleepy to realize it wasn't my cat's footsteps that I heard, but a human's. So, as a normal person, I yelled my cat's name, put my hand out the window to tap on the ground, as such to let my cat know that she could come to get in. That was my mistake. In no time, I heard footsteps coming straight to the window, and I felt a man's hand grab my arm and start to pull me out the window. I started screaming for someone to come and help, but no one came. I felt the adrenaline instantly rush to my body and quickly grabbed a sharp object. I believe it was a dirty knife covered in old food. I stabbed the guy's hand. Blood dripped out as I heard a blood-curdling scream, the scream that I will remember for my whole life. The man quickly ran away as fast as he could, and I fell back on my bed. I opened my door and ran as fast as I could to my parents' bedroom to tell them the horror story I just lived. They woke up fast and called the cops, reassuring me that I was safe and everything, caring for my horrible wound from the man's grip on my arm. The cops arrived at my house and I told them what happened. I was still laced with adrenaline. My words were not sounding clear. With the man's blood that was left on the knife, they managed to get his name and where he lived. They followed up with us and told us that he got arrested for attempted kidnapping and that he's already been charged with many other crimes before. I am still traumatized to this day. My friend and I, both 21-year-old females, went to Applebee's for a few $1 margaritas, then went off to a park where she said she knew a spot. We go 20 minutes away to this park. We go down this path that takes us around 10 minutes to the Bay Area. We find a nice log to sit there and watch the sunset. As we were relaxing on the log, a family strolls by with their dog to hang out on the other side of the shore. A few minutes go by and a couple comes through and sets up. They eat a big pineapple with a knife. The sun sets, but it's still light out, and we didn't think about the walk back. Eventually, we go to head back, and it's dark. The wooded area we had to walk through is getting really dark. As we are walking, she gets her phone camera out, as it's pitch black at this point. We start talking about how creepy it was. I felt an uneasy feeling, that feeling you get afraid that someone is behind you. Well, we're walking along, going across the bridge up a hill, and all of a sudden we hear loud footsteps on the bridge. I see light from what appeared to be his phone, going back and forth as if he was sprinting. We panicked. We start running, and I'm thinking his footsteps kind of sound like he was on a bike. I thought, we'll go up this steep hill on our left. No way this guy is following us, and no way they'll get up this hill on this bike. Turns out, there was no bike. We stopped running as we didn't hear anything. She flashes her light behind us, and there's a silhouette of a man jogging towards us, his body posture looking like he got tired from running. So we kept running and stopping to see if he was still chasing us, and then again we hear footsteps running towards us. We keep looking back while running to make sure that he's not right on us. At this point, my friend screamed, "Hey!" in a panicked voice, and he screamed back, "Hey!" Then after that said, "What, are you scared?" We keep running. She's on the phone with the police. We finally hit a paved road, nowhere near her car. When I took us up the hill, that was not the right path that we originally took. We knock on a house, lights are on, but no one answers. We start down the road to their neighbor. I look back and see a silhouette of a man walking behind the first person's house. He got up to the fence and creeped back into the darkness. That second neighbor helped us. His wife got us some water and the police came and took us to her car. That was the most traumatic experience I think I've ever had. The intentions of the man felt sinister, and the way that he was yelling at us felt so uncanny. I hate this feeling I have, and I have so much questions that won't be answered. I can't get this one question out of my head. What if he caught up to us? I'm a 41-year-old female. I live in Montana, and a few years ago I was forced to relocate after my landlord decided to rent to her son. The community I had lived in for 11 and a half years had become incredibly expensive. Unfortunately, I was forced to relocate to another city, and because of this unexpected move and associated costs, I had to move in with a roommate. My roommate left to pursue better job prospects about 3 months after I moved in. Our unit was a triplex, so there were 2 gentlemen who inhabited the other 2 units. I was never added to the lease as the property manager required a full deposit, and I was not in a financially healthy spot at the time. I remained in the unit for a year and a half on my own, paying rent and utilities. I became very good friends with the man in the unit closest to mine. We'll call him Devin, a 52-year-old male. Devin was a disabled veteran in recovery. I also am a veteran, so he held a soft spot in my heart. We shared meals, hung out, and discussed all of life's mysteries, and would look out for one another. Devin had gone to treatment for 6 weeks, and I watched his cat while he was gone. Our friendship developed over the course of 1.5 years. Devin had expressed romantic interest. However, right from the beginning, I clearly informed Devin that I did not share those feelings, and we would never be more than just good friends. Devin seemed to be lonely, which made sense. However, I am a person who requires alone time to recharge my batteries. I would catch him walking through the front yard multiple times a day to get the mail, which I believed was to see if I was outside so he could stop and chat. When I'd leave in the morning to go to work, Devin was always outside to tell me that I looked nice and have a good day. I told him that made me feel uncomfortable, and he should just send a text letting me know that he wanted to hang out and wait for a response. There were a couple times I yelled at him for overstepping my boundaries. The first, I had just got home and pulled into my garage. I was on a phone call and stayed in the car. Devin looked through the garage window to see if I was home. I was annoyed, but didn't really think too much of it. The second, I was getting dressed in my room in the summer, so the window was cracked. I felt this was safe as the window was not placed that anyone should be walking by, as it was on my patio on the back of my home. I caught Devin peeking through it. I lost it. I let Devin know under no certain terms his behavior was appropriate, and that if he didn't respect my boundaries, we would no longer be friends. Last year, while I was still at home, I asked Devin to watch my dogs for a couple days so I could go to a family event out of state. Devin was happy to help, and I was very appreciative. Not long after I returned, I started to notice strange things in my home, but I really just thought it was me. For instance, it was fairly certain that I had locked the door in the morning when I left for work, but when I returned, it would be unlocked. I would be sure that I had shut off all the lights, but when I got home in the evening, one would be on. I really just thought it was absent-mindedness. Fast forward a couple months. My mom became sick with cancer. My sister watched my dog while I went to tend to my mom. My sister reached out to me and asked me if anyone else had a key to the apartment. I let her know that she had the only spare key, and asked why. She said she experienced the same issues with the lights and locks. I had not shared my concerns with my sister prior to her communicating hers with me, as I really doubted my own sanity. While I was out of town, I received a text message from Devin asking if I had a potato he could borrow. I let him know that I was out of state with my mom, who was sick. Devin did not reply, which was out of character. but I had noticed a change in Devin's affect. He was more reserved and less friendly towards me. I thought it had to do with my firm adherence to my boundaries, which was okay. He didn't have to like them, just respect them. When I got back to town, one night I stayed over at my sister's house after helping her move. As mentioned above, I was struggling financially, so I would carefully budget and plan my weekly meals. The morning before my sister's move, I had placed 3 pieces of bacon in a Ziploc to be used later for a BLT. When I returned the following morning, much to my belief, there were only 2 pieces of bacon. I held the bag in my hands knowing that there had been 3. No longer did I doubt myself. I called my sister and let her know that someone had been getting into my house that I always kept locked. The only logical thing that could have happened is Devin made a copy of my key when he was watching my dog in the fall. My sister reminded me of the potato text. The potato in the counter basket was gone. I had enough information to be certain my neighbor has violated my trust and was no friend. However, I still wasn't afraid of him. As I mentioned, he is a disabled vet and was somewhat feeble and sickly. I was not scared of confrontation. I immediately went to a hardware store, purchased a camera that streams to your phone once the motion detector has been activated. I placed it facing the side door where Devin would enter. It also has 2-way audio capability, so my plan was that when Devin decided to enter my home again, I would see it and say over the camera something to the effect of, "Get the fuck out of my house, put the key you copied on the counter, and never try to speak to me again, or I will contact law enforcement." As I wrote above, I was not on the lease and did not want to be homeless, so I could not turn to the property manager for help, and Devin knew it. In the evenings, I started placing a jug of cat litter and a kitchen chair in front of the door that I knew Devin was accessing, but I never expected he would attempt to come in while I was at home, and really, he had only taken a piece of uncooked bacon and a potato. Laying on the couch one night, watching TV, I thought I heard something sliding on the floor in the laundry room where the door was, but I knew there was no way that he would come in while I was home. My cat was running around playing, so I decided that it was probably just her, and that I was just being paranoid because of all that had happened. The next morning while changing my laundry, I noticed the litter and chair had been pushed 3 to 4 inches. I checked the sensitivity of the camera and found that I was able to replicate by slowly opening the door. Devin had tried to come in while I was home. Why? That morning I took bear spray into the shower with me while my knees knocked. I was terrified. I felt vulnerable and violated. Devin knew that I knew now also. He knew that I had placed a barrier in front of the door. After that morning, he never was outside in the morning, nor did he walk through the yard to get his mail. I obtained a firearm for protection and did make a police report. The police officer was annoyed with me as I didn't want them to approach Devin, as all Devin would need to do is report me to the property manager, and I would be homeless. I'm grateful that whatever he was up to was apparently prevented. The fact that he tried to come in when he knew I was home gives me the heebie-jeebies. I wonder if he went through my underwear, watched me while I slept. Since then, my situation has greatly improved. I ended up moving shortly after to take care of my mom. I got my own place again a few months ago. I never put my trust into another neighbor for a pet or house sitting again. It still blows my mind that I had some douchebag stealing from me and likely stalking me. This story just solidifies one should always trust their gut. There were so many times that a red flag was screaming, and I thought I was just being crazy. Hey all. So I just got back from a trip to New York City. I go there multiple times a year as I have family and a handful of close friends that live out there. Been meaning to post this since it happened a couple nights ago, but I wanted to make sure I had enough time to sit down and regather all the details correctly. I'm sure we've all heard crazy subway stories at one point or another, but I never thought I would end up in one this terrifying. So I was headed back to my hotel from a friend's house at about 3 a.m. My friend lives deep in Brooklyn. My hotel was in Manhattan. So if you know the city, you know that's about a 30 to 45 minute train ride, give or take. My train finally arrived and I was happy to be headed home. I was exhausted and it was late. My trip had been going unexpectedly well up to this point, so I had faith that I'd be able to get home with no worries, especially since the trains and streets were basically empty at this hour. The train was brand new and had just been cleaned, something I've never seen before. Hell, it even smelled like a new car, and still had fresh mop water on the floor. There's only about 3 other people on the train, all minding their business. So far so good. About 2 stops into the train ride, a man that looked like he was in his 20s stumbled into the train mid-ride through the connecting door of the cars. He had on a Nike ski mask, which usually isn't a good sign on a 70-degree night in general context, but I'm not one to judge by appearance. Plus I knew the ski mask is sort of a trend nowadays, so I didn't think too much of it at first. He sort of hobbled in and he was clutching his stomach, almost as if he was concealing something or hiding a wound. His eyes were bloodshot red, and at first I thought it was because he was high or something. He immediately hobbled into the nearest corner and sort of sulked into that corner, facing it, until the next stop. He then ran out of the closest door and erupted in the most painful cry I've ever heard. He was just screaming, moaning, and crying, all while stumbling running alongside the stopped train on the platform, still clutching his stomach, screaming things like, "Why?" and gasping through the tears. Keep in mind, I'm sitting in the middle of the train, facing away from the side that he got off, so I'm kind of breaking my neck behind me as he's running behind me to watch what's going on. He then runs back inside the same car, through the door, on the opposite side of the car now. He was on my right side before, but now he's on my left. There's no one between me and him, since everyone else was closer to the right side. He did the sulking while facing into the corner thing on the other side of the car now, but this time he kept screaming and crying and yelling things like, "Why?" But then he started crying hysterically that it was too hard for me to make out a lot of what he was saying. From the certain words I gathered though, I'm almost positive that a very close friend of his had gotten killed or something. It was the only thing that would explain the way he was acting and the things he was saying. Plus he was suited up like he had just came back from a street mission gone bad or something. At this point, everyone on the train is frantically flicking their eyes over to him every few seconds. You could tell that they were panicked, but not trying to cause a scene about it or rile him up anymore. I was getting a little sussed out myself, but I had seen and heard worse about the subway, and if someone he knew really just died, I honestly felt horrible for the guy before anything else. But then the entire situation escalated to a point that I have only seen in movies or crime shows until now. The man stayed in the corner crying, screaming, and muttering things to himself for another 3 minutes or so, all while clutching his stomach as if he was concealing something. I had definitely seen that black object in his hand by this point, but I couldn't tell if it was big enough to be a gun or not. After I saw this, I tried not to take my eyes off of him for too long at this time, since I was the closest person to him, but I also didn't want to stare. By this point, he started to say concerning things like, "Someone's got to pay for this," and then he would just repeat it louder and louder, and then he burst into dialogue that made my heart fucking drop. Keep in mind, he's still facing the corner, hunched over, clutching his item. "You motherfuckers sitting on this train right now, you're gonna feel me tonight. You hear me? Y'all gonna feel me tonight. Y'all gonna fucking hate it too. Oh my god, y'all gonna fucking hate this. Y'all gonna hate me." He kept getting louder and louder as he was saying this to the point where he was basically screaming by the last part. I don't know what he said after that, because as soon as the train stopped at the next stop, I fucking bolted. He was screaming shit at me as I got off, but I couldn't hear it, and I definitely wasn't trying to turn back. I ran to the nearest street exit, chain smoked a couple cigarettes, and waited the 20 minutes for the next train to come. I've seen enough in my life to know that that wasn't the situation I was willing to gamble with at all. I prayed for the last 3 people on the train got home safe and nothing happened. I briefly searched the news and Twitter the next day for any possible info I could find, but didn't see anything. But who even knows what's worth the headline anymore? So to the man on the subway at 3 a.m., I pray that you find the solace you need to heal from whatever trauma you were going through. But please, let's never ever meet again. First time poster here. I live in a rural area in Tennessee, and this happened either the summer of 92 or 93, so I was a preteen. I still can see this in my mind like it happened yesterday. Like I said before, a rural area in Tennessee where we used to have serious issues with people dumping unwanted, worn out items and garbage down the beautiful hillsides and ravines. At that time, it was common to find illegal dumping sites everywhere because there was no bulk pickup offered by our one waste disposal monopoly. In this part of the state, the economic disparity is obvious. You have some of the poorest people and some multiple mansion and vacation home folks. My family fell somewhere in the upper middle class. Thinking Titanic, we would be either the lowest rung of first class or the very top of second class. Unfortunately, the majority would be in steerage or the coal bunker. Well, it was August in Tennessee, aka sun-scorching heat and enough humidity to make it slightly uncomfortable to breathe. Many describe it as swamp-ass capital of the state. Anyway, we had an extraordinary rare murder in our county. It was all that anyone was talking about. It was all you heard in our churches and beauty salons. The victim was largely unknown, a woman in her early 30s and nowhere near wealthy. I didn't know her, and nor did anyone. She had moved here less than a year ago and kept to herself and had not been reported missing. Then, just before our summer break came to an end, the lady was found at the base of a steep incline deep in one of our densely wooded areas by some folk out on a nature hike. There she was, found at the base of a large illegal dump on a windy dirt road that was barely wide enough for one vehicle. If you met another car, one would have to pull over so far so you're almost off the road entirely. Even creepier, the road was named Bone Road. Yeah. When she was found, she had lost everything from her neck up, but both her upper and lower areas were recovered. Her killer had not been caught. So, my mom was born and raised here, and was of a strong, yet goofy stock. She has always been my best buddy. She was loved by every student that she ever taught. Our friends adored my goofy mama, often telling me how lucky I was to have her. My dad was a pharmacist in our area, smarter than most, and happy to go fill a lost or forgotten prescription even late into the night. My dad isn't from here but is very well known because of his job. Everyone knows my mama because she and most of our huge family have been here ever since the ancestors settled here in the 1800s. The rest of her family lived in Middle Tennessee. On that day in August, we had been at a family reunion picnic at a beautiful, naturally made lake we lived near. Suddenly, scattered thunderstorms had popped up and brought our get-together to an end. It was just me and my mom, but on our ride home, we decided that we were Sherlock Holmes and Watson. We wanted to see the crime scene. I know, brilliant. My dad was at work and my brother was with a friend. This was 92 or 93, so no GPS, Alexa, Siri, or Google Earth, not even MapQuest. My dad was on our local school board and had been given a highly detailed map of the entire county. Since neither of us knew how to reach Bone Road, it was agreed the map would be our guide. We went home, grabbed the map, and set out like we were Magellan. Eventually we found the place and headed to the spot. Being the ignorant rubberneckers we were, we had just planned to drive past the stupid dump site. I can't explain how creepy this place was. A murder dumped in the middle of bumfuck Egypt, on a road that started with blacktop, translated to gravel, and then good old dirt. It was mid-afternoon, but the sudden rain on the August ground made the area steamy. Literal steam was emanating from the road, the fields, the woods, everywhere, just to add to the thrill of our folly. As we approached the location, there was a blind curve, making it impossible to see the place until you were right up on it. We rounded the corner. We saw that we were not alone. A very dirty man with his dirty black truck pulled over at the dump, just far enough to allow us to pass. Sure, Joe Dirt could have just been another looky-loo like us, but he gave off a creepy as fuck vibe, just standing by his truck, looking down into the dump. It wasn't a sheriff officer. We know all of our local authorities, and they had cleared the location a day or so before. Anyone could access this area. As we squeezed past his truck, he was standing on the passenger side of our car. I'm 12 or 13, I can't drive, so he was on my side as we passed, so close to him that I could see 2 teeth clear as day. He just smiled in this uber creeptastic, almost leering way. Not nice, not friendly. We got past and thanked the Lord that Mr. Two-Tooth hadn't followed us. We agreed we would reach the end of Bone Road and get the hell out of there. Oh, you know there's a but. We reached the end of Bone Road, ending at a field. Bone Road was a dead end. No pun intended. My mom said the words that I had been screaming in my head. Oh fuck. We had no choice. We had to do a 5-point turn and come back where we came from. Oh, I bet he's gone now. My mom's feeble attempt to soothe us both. Guess what? He was still there, still smiling his huge 2-tooth smile. Now, as my adult self reflected on this, he could have came after us, knowing we would have been cornered, but neither of us have ever been accused of being too rational. We made it out unscathed, of course, and my dad hit the roof when he heard our tapestry of idiocy our afternoon adventure was. But, you know, there's always a but. Days later, our newspaper heralded the good news. The murderer was caught. The woman had been killed by a boyfriend turned stalker. She had moved here from a town about 45 minutes away to get away from him, but he found her. He drove around with her body in the trunk before happening on the dump. Happily ever after? No. As we stared down this guy's mugshot, it was real. Mr. Two-Tooth was her killer. We never told my dad that part. Mr. Two-Tooth was convicted of first-degree murder and abuse of a corpse. He will die in the state prison system, serving life with no parole. Still, my mom and I promised we would never be so dumb again. We still have wild adventures, but not too freaky. Remote murder dump sites on unknown terrain, and with no one knowing where we were. We really could have met our literal dead end. It's an odd thing, knowing that we had been face to face with a brutal murderer, not once but twice. Well, I did have a super too close to call run-in with another murderer, but that will have to be another post on another day. Oh, but Mr. Two-Tooth, let's not meet ever again. Before I got my car in my freshman year of college, I would use Lyft to get to work pretty much every day during the summer. During the winter and fall, I just walked, even at night. And in all of those Lyft cars and drivers, I've never had any noticeable encounters. I've probably been in a couple hundred by now, and aside from an occasional political opinion and speeder, it was all fine. One day I ordered a Lyft car like normal. It'd be here in about 7 minutes. Cool. I walk outside a couple minutes early to go wait for my driver and see a vehicle that pretty much matches the description of mine sitting in my driveway. It was the same color, the same size, and unless you notice the little details, it pretty much looked the same. But my driver was still 2 minutes away. I chose to ignore him, thinking it was a funny coincidence and maybe he's a friend of a neighbor or something. But then he rolls down the window and looks at me, so I go up to talk to him. Maybe he's lost. And by the way, a different race entirely from the actual driver, so I know for sure it's not him, but a similar skin tone and age. He tells me he's my driver and pulls out his phone that has my profile, like how your driver has to make sure it's you. So in my naive and innocent teenage mind, I think to myself, oh, Lyft must have accidentally sent me two drivers. I tell him that he's not the driver I was told I would meet. Right as we were talking, my actual driver pulled up and rolled down his window. I explained the situation and said, I'll probably get in the first guy's car because he was here first. Then my actual driver says that I should probably go with whoever's on my phone. That sounded pretty logical to me and made sense. But before I could turn around and tell the other guy I was gonna go ahead and pick the other guy, he drove off. Tinted windows, by the way. It wasn't until I got into the car that my driver brought it to my attention how fucking weird that was. He told me that in the 10 years of him being a Lyft driver, nothing like that has ever happened to him or anyone he knew. Then it suddenly dawned on me about what might have just happened. The similar car appearance to my actual driver. The fact that he had all my info but I didn't have his. The fact that he was there a couple minutes early so that if I did get in, I wouldn't have been intercepted by my real driver. Everything. And I almost got into his car. I went to work and I was totally shaken up. I tried making a report to Lyft, but without any evidence or information other than a basic physical description, there wasn't much I could do. My Lyft driver said that he would go ahead and tell the story to some of the other driver friends on a social media forum so that they could spread the word. So that makes me feel a little better. That driver might have saved my life. I think about it a lot. And hey, my dad heard about it and got me a car. So at least I got something other than trauma. I traveled to Seoul for a week by myself back in 2018. Because I was still studying and at the time doing a semester abroad in Kyoto, and Seoul is expensive, I decided to book a room in a hostel. It was supposed to be a mixed dorm for 6 people. Upon arrival, I found out that I was actually going to share a room with 5 men who were already staying at the hostel. At that point, I was still quite naive and didn't think much of it. Besides, the hostel was already fully booked. There was one guy from Japan, one Korea, 2 Chinese, and a German in my room. The German guy gave me weird vibes from the beginning, especially by the way he just stared at me. But I brushed it off because I'll be out and about all day anyway. Every day he would ask me if I wanted to hang out and go see the sights together, which I really like to do on my own. So I always came up with an excuse. One time, I accepted his invitation to explore Gangnam, and it was just awkward. We had very little to speak about besides small talk. When I get ready in the morning, as in apply makeup and do my hair, he'd just stand there and watch, saying nothing. I got annoyed and asked him if he didn't have somewhere else to be several times. He'd just shrug. Anyway, for the entire week I was weirded out, but I did my best to avoid him. One time, we ran into each other at a cafe in the city center, which I found strange because what are the odds? The other guys in my dorm were actually super nice. We even went out to dinner one night. Then, on my very last day, I woke up too early and drifted back asleep. The next time I woke up, it was to him sitting by my bedside, caressing my arm and shoulder. I immediately sat straight up and asked him what he was doing. Even though it was only my arm he was touching, I felt disgusted. I always thought of myself as being someone who would scream and curse at someone in this situation, but I was simply dazed and shocked. He then went on to confess his love for me, how he wanted to meet up when we got back home. I'm from Germany too, and how I was just so special. When I pointed out that he couldn't possibly be in love with me because it had only been a week, he insisted that he just knew and that he wanted to show me affection. At that point, I was just nauseous. Of course, he was leaving that morning too and offered to go to the airport together. I insisted that I was taking the later bus, and he thankfully left it at that. I couldn't wait for him to just go and leave me alone. I'm glad I didn't run into him in the airport, but at some point I just burst into tears because it had been exhausting to ward off his advances all week. and then gently tell him I wasn't interested in him after he was fucking touching me while I was sleeping. I don't even know how I managed to remain so calm and polite to him, but who knows how he would have acted if I had been aggressive. With hindsight, I think I should have insisted on switching rooms, but up until that very last morning, nothing had actually happened, and I would tell myself that maybe the poor guy was just awkward and didn't mean it. After this, I never doubted my instincts again. Hello everyone. I'm very new to posting on here, so please bear with me. I wanted to share my story that has occurred over the last 5 years. This story is about me, currently 20, and my stalker ex, currently 23. 2019 to 2021, the start of our relationship. 5 years ago, I met my ex. I'll call him Alex for my own safety. In early to mid 2019, I came across Alex's profile on Instagram and recognized him as a student who attended the same high school as me. I always thought he was attractive, so I followed him on Instagram, and to my surprise, he actually responded to one of my stories. We started messaging on Instagram back and forth, then both of us quickly found out that we liked each other. One night, when I had fallen asleep on the phone with Alex, I heard his voice coming from the phone whispering something like, "I would rape you," and other things along that manner. I thought I was hearing things, so I brushed it off, thinking I was just dreaming. Eventually, me and him started dating and going on dates. Everything went pretty well, except for the fact that when we would kiss, he would bite me extremely hard, to the point that it would make me bleed. I told him multiple times not to do it, but he would always continue. A couple months into dating, a girl had made a video on Instagram claiming he was a cheater, but he denied to me that he even knew this girl, and I believed him. 10 months of dating went by, and a friend sent me screenshots of him being active on Tinder. I immediately broke up with him after that. A couple months later, I started dating someone new. During this relationship with my new partner, Alex would blow up my phone with messages and calls. I decided to block him. He then started driving past my house every single day. At this point, I had started my first job and he would eventually show up there too. I even moved jobs and he found me there as well. Getting back together 2021 to 2023. The situation eventually died down. Randomly, out of the blue, I got a flower delivery of pink roses. It had Alex's name on the card attached, but nothing written. Being the stupid 17-year-old senior in high school I was, I actually unblocked him and thanked him. He asked me to hang out, and I willingly went to hang out with him soon after we started texting. My 17-year-old self thought it would be cool dating a hot, well-known older boy, so I eventually fell back into Alex. After a couple times of hanging out, we started dating again. I eventually lost my V card to Alex, and we started regularly sleeping with each other. One day he texted me saying that he had a surprise for me, and then sent me an iCloud file. I opened the file and it was a video of us having sex. I had no idea he had been recording us. I couldn't even consent as I was 17 at the time, and he was 20. Again, stupid 17-year-old me stayed with him, regardless of the red flags. Eventually, our relationship became sexually and physically abusive. One night, he raped me while I was intoxicated and unconscious, and left bruises on my head and abdomen. A couple days after that, I decided enough was enough and broke up with him. The stalking, 2023 to 2024. Immediately following the breakup, he would constantly text and call me. He would beg me to see him. I kept denying him, but he kept going. He would threaten to come to my house in the middle of the night while I was sleeping. This happened for a couple months. During this time, I met someone new and we started dating. I was having trouble with my mom, and my new partner asked me to come move in with him. Somehow, Alex found out where me and my new partner were living, so he started showing up at our place. We documented everything from our cameras and ended up filing a restraining order against Alex. We got granted a temp order until our hearing, Our hearing day came, and the judge extended the temporary order to let things cool down for 6 months. If he breaks the order, the judge will grant him a long-term order at the next hearing. Within days of extending the temp order, Alex violated it by parking in front of my house on multiple occasions. I called the cops multiple times, but they never even gave him a warning. One day, while I was working, I get a call from my local PD that Alex tried purchasing a firearm, which violates our order. They just warned him not to do that again and had to let me know for my safety. Obviously, knowing that your ex tried to purchase a firearm is scary itself. The following days, he would follow me to work and stand in front of my boyfriend's truck in the early hours of the morning. My current, fleeing 2024. He would start tailgating me on my way to work or swerve in front of me with his car. My boyfriend and I moved somewhere else but are still in the same city. Somehow, Alex still managed to find us. My boyfriend decided that if the cops weren't going to help us, then we would need to leave the state. We ended up packing everything in the middle of the night and driving a state over where my boyfriend's family lives. We've been here about 2 months. My boyfriend and I found good jobs and plan on leasing our own apartment soon. It's been peaceful for the most part. However, I still hear about what Alex does back home. He still tells everyone that we are together, still even posts pictures of me on Instagram. My story is still ongoing, and I've left out a lot of details. I'm a 19-year-old female. I was out to eat with my boyfriend at a place where it has a live show right next door. We decided to listen outside for some of the bands playing once we were done eating. It was around 9 p.m. at this time. Shortly after going outside, this girl came up to me and starts talking to me about all kinds of things. She has bright red hair, many piercings and tattoos. The first thing she did was compliment me about what I was wearing. I wasn't wearing anything special, a plain pink dress and Crocs. She seemed very friendly and continued the conversation with us. Mainly me though. I figured it was because I have piercings and a tattoo. I also kind of chalked it up as her being drunk and just overly friendly. Eventually, she asked me weird questions that I didn't really understand and I can't recall. Something along the lines of, "What's your purpose here?" or something like that. I just remember not understanding what she was asking me and just telling her where I worked because it sounded like that's what she was asking me. She says she works in a strip club in the same town and to come dance. She left abruptly after while texting on her phone and went over to this guy. Me and my boyfriend went to leave. I really thought nothing of it and we passed by them. After turning the corner, my boyfriend told me to check and see if we were being followed. I looked behind my shoulder and I didn't see anyone. We walked a little further and I looked back again and there was the guy. He was walking extremely quick and caught up pretty fast. He followed me all the way to my car, which was at least a mile away, until we got it and locked the doors. He was just a couple feet away from my car before he turned around. My boyfriend told me to start the car ASAP, and once we left, he told me that as we passed them, he heard the girl say to the guy something along the lines of, "She's a little nervous, but..." And he just had a bad vibe that I was going to be sex trafficked, or that they were going to try to pimp me out, maybe snatch me up, I don't know. It wouldn't have been very hard for him to do. He was at least double my weight, as I'm only 100 pounds. He was following with a lot of speed, and I mean, really, what was his motive? I'm at my parents' house for the summer. All the lights were off and the cars were missing from the driveway, despite 4 people being in the house. It's 7:30 at night, raining, and a black truck pulls up into the driveway. A young guy in normal clothes, black hoodie and sweatpants, knocks on the door. My 8-year-old sister answers the door, with their big dog barking upstairs. They asked her 3 things. Are your parents home? Can we hunt the deer on your property? Do your parents want to come hunting with us? She says yes, that her parents are at home, and goes to get our dad. The weird thing is, there is no deer ever on our land, and it's not deer season. My dad comes down to talk to them, and they switch up their story. Now they're saying that they want to hunt turkeys that are on our property. We do have turkeys sometimes wandering around our property, but not today. They told our dad all about the guns they had in their trunk, and there were many. They tell us how they came here from Alabama to hunt. They then asked if they can hunt on what's clearly our neighbor's property. My dad sent them away, but they drove by our house a couple more times after that. I don't know if this is that strange in New England, but from where I'm from, it definitely is. Also, it could just be my theater mind being overdramatic like always, but I thought might give it a shot. Worst case, I write a cool horror story based off of this encounter. I'm going to start out by saying this isn't some flashy scary story and doesn't have the most satisfying ending, but no one got hurt, which I'm grateful for. This all happened when I was in 5th or 6th grade. I'm Canadian, so we have primary school, kindergarten to grade 8, high school, grade 9 to grade 12 or 13, then college or university, so I would have been around 8 or 9 at this time. I'm now writing this as a 23-year-old, going to be 24 in July, so my memory may be a bit foggy, but what happened this day will forever stand out to me. My sister and I, who was 2 years younger than me, let's call her Paya, went to this little French immersion school. At the time, we were not living close to it, and had to take a school bus. The bus stop where we would be picked up in the morning and dropped off in the afternoon was about a block or so away from the apartment buildings we lived in. My sister and I would get up at 7 a.m. to catch the bus at 7:30 to get to school by 8. There was another family that also caught the bus at our stop with some younger children, so we were never fully alone. But my sister and I would walk there from home without any adults because my mother worked nights and my sister and I thought we were old enough to walk the short distance alone. This is important later. This all happened during late spring, think around April-May, when the weather was getting consistently hotter during the day, upwards of 20 degrees Celsius. Again, important later. I should also note that I have allergenic asthma, which means activities like running or strenuous exercise, as well as allergens like pollen, can trigger my asthma. For this reason, I wasn't a big runner, and seeing me run was a rare occurrence. So in the morning, I'm not a morning person and never have been. Bright and early at 7:15 a.m., my sister and I head out to go wait at the bus stop for the school bus. Everything was pretty normal, me being the more obviously tired one of us. But something stuck out to me. I noticed an old brown pickup truck parked in one of the driveways of a nearby house. A person sat in the driver's seat seemingly doing nothing, maybe asleep. This wouldn't have been weird, except I knew the people that lived there, and they drove a minivan. Maybe it was just how ugly the color of the brown pickup was, but it stuck out to me. In hindsight, I should have questioned why the guy was in the truck just sat there in the vehicle for over 15 minutes doing nothing, but I was too tired to care. Off to school we went, and the day was honestly forgettable in how routine it was. On the bus to go home, however, my sister and I got into an argument. So when we got to our stop, Paya took off running back to the house ahead of me, leaving me with the parents who picked up their younger children at the stop. And then after they left, I was alone. I was not impressed by the stunt that my sister had pulled, but began my walk down the street with traffic near me, going the same way I was walking. I was about a minute into my walk home when I noticed that brown pickup truck that looked oddly familiar. I hadn't realized at the time, but it was probably the one from the morning. It was slowing down beside me as I walked. Now, it was a pretty hot day. One kid collapsed during recess because of heat stroke, so I was having a hard time already due to the heat. The driver from the old brown pickup rolls down the passenger window to talk to me, waving a hand at me to get me to stop. I do stop because I was raised to be polite, but I kept my distance. A patch of grass separating the curb and the sidewalk, meaning I had at least 60 centimeters of space between me and the curb. "Hey kiddo, where you headed?" the driver, a man in his late 50s or so, asked. Now, I had been raised knowing all about stranger danger, so I was already on guard about this. "Home," I told him, purposely vague about it. At this point, the man leaned over and unlocked the passenger door, and I was able to see him a little better. He had a tattoo of what I think was a tiger or some other animal up his right arm. He wore a plain gray muscle shirt. I couldn't see what kind of pants he was wearing because I'm short. His hair was salt and pepper, pulled back into a greasy ponytail, and he had a mustache. His skin tone was tan, but he seemed to be Caucasian, and his hands were large, with a scar across his knuckles. "How about you hop in and I'll give you a ride? It's pretty hot out here today," this complete stranger offered me, with a smile, and I noticed he seemed to have a missing tooth. I, of course, smiled back, not to be rude, and simply said a polite, "No thank you, sir," and started walking again. Now, this would have been fine and dandy if it had ended like that, but instead he began keeping pace with me with his truck, and insisting I get in, that it was too hot out, and that all the other kids had been picked up. Now, this struck me as odd, and still does even now, because this meant he had been watching when all of us got off the bus. Though I guess he didn't notice my sister run off, but still, this was creepy. I again said, "No thank you," but he didn't seem to take the hint. In fact, he became more pushy, and maybe a little irritated. He had pulled up so close to the curb that he was almost jumping it with his pickup now, and at this point I was really feeling scared this man might try to do something I wouldn't like. So I quickly said, "Have a nice day," and then took off running as fast as I could towards the apartment complex. I vaguely heard him shout something to me, but I just kept running, cutting over the grassy hill with a few trees on it, instead of staying on the sidewalk. I saw that someone had just left the underground parking area that connected two of the buildings, so I ran in just before the door that lets the cars out closed. I didn't stop running until I made it to the 8th floor, got into my house and slammed and locked the door. At this point, I was in a full-blown asthma attack, as well as crying in fear. I had collapsed against the door, hyperventilating and sobbing, and my sister was now freaking out at how I just burst in like that. I couldn't get out what I was trying to say, as I could barely breathe. I eventually was able to calm down, and my mother came home from what she had been doing. I was able to explain what happened. My mother then called the police, and we had a female officer come interview me, to whom I recounted only what had happened on my way home from the bus stop. I didn't put it together that he had probably been watching us earlier that morning, as well as later. The nice policewoman took my statement. Unfortunately, nothing ever came of the investigation, and didn't help that I couldn't remember the license plate, other than it looked like it wasn't from Ontario, Canada, which in hindsight is even scarier to me. So I never really heard anything after that. But to the man who may or may not have tried to kidnap me on my way home from school, let's not meet, ever. This happened last night. I was almost home after a long day of traveling, and it was approximately 1 a.m. as I rounded the corner and stopped at the intersection right near my home. The light was red, and as I slowed to a stop, out of the corner of my eye I saw these people on the sidewalk. They were all dressed in black and wearing white face masks or face paint, maybe a combination of the two. One was crouched on the ground while the other two were standing crooked. They were still like statues when I came to a stop, but when I looked at them, they all started crawling and walking towards me. I was exhausted, and apparently my instincts in that moment of terror is to just laugh and shake my head like I was in on the joke. They were super close to my car, but thankfully the light turned green, and I was able to get out of there before they reached my car. Since you could see the corner of my house from the intersection, I ended up driving for quite a while, and then turning back around once I felt like enough time had passed, so that they didn't follow my car pulling into the street I live on. I imagine it was just some teens playing a prank. But afterwards, I was thinking about it being a school night, and most people wouldn't be having sleepovers in the middle of the week. I'm debating on if it's worth calling the non-emergency line to report it just in case. Regardless, I won't be going out past sundown for quite some time, and I'll likely invest in some door lock reinforcements. This happened a few days ago, but I still feel creeped out if I think about it. I live near a big city, and I don't have a car, so I have to take the bus every day. The day started pretty normal. I was already on for like 10 minutes, and two young girls, around 10 and 11, get on the bus and sat in the seats in front of me. Some minutes passed by, and the next stop, a really creepy looking guy, around 50, got on and sat 2 rows in front of the girls. He had on dirty clothes and overall looked really unhygienic. Some minutes passed and I saw that he always turned his head back to look at the girls that were sitting in front of me. It was already weird. Again, a few minutes passed and I saw the guy getting out his phone and pointed towards me and the two girls. It felt weird, but suddenly I saw a flash of his phone. I was shocked but thought maybe he accidentally put the flash on. 2 minutes passed and he did it again. At this point, I felt disgusted and got up and went over there. I was angered and fueled with disgust. I asked him, "What the fuck are you doing?" He asked back, "What do you mean?" I screamed at him in the middle of the bus, "Delete the pictures you took of the girls." He started to smile, but in a really creepy way. He looked at me and told me that he took a photo, but not of the girls. That was the moment the realization happened. The guy took photos of me. I was shocked and felt creeped out. I didn't know what to do. I just sat back in my seat and waited for the ride to arrive. Fortunately, the girls took the next stop and the guy didn't. At this point, I knew he really told the truth about taking pictures of me and not the girls. Me and the guy got off at the same stop, but he didn't do anything, just stared at me. I still feel a bit creeped out if I think about it. I'm happy because the two girls weren't harmed, but this is creepy as hell. This happened back in 2018. I was 24 and my sister was 25. We're both native New Yorkers, and there are plenty of stories I have. I think we all know New York is strange. Anyway, we were on a crowded train going to meet up with a friend. There are no seats, so we were holding onto the pole. It was already a tight squeeze, but this man and a girl get on and hold the pole that my sister and I are both holding. We're talking and notice the man directly in front of us keeps looking at us, like really looking. I'm already feeling uncomfortable as it is, and it's hard not to pay attention. I try to ignore it by talking to my sister. By the way, we're nowhere near our destination. A couple of train stops later, he eventually says to us, "Are you guys sisters?" We both look at one another, feeling awkward, and I'm like, "Yeah." At this point, I'm praying that the train would hurry up to get to the next stop so we can get off. I know my sister was thinking the same. The other girl is looking at us, and she looks uncomfortable. He smiles and seems to get excited, if you know what I mean. He then says to us, "Oh yeah, you guys are sisters," in an incredibly perverted tone. He licks his lips and keeps looking from my sister to me, back and forth. At this point, the girl gives us an awkward smile, and she looks just as terrified as we do. I could tell that this man was getting really excited by the fact that we were sisters, and then comments about how beautiful we are. My sister looks at me and we see a stop coming. We both know that it's not our stop, but we're leaving the train. He keeps talking to us and we keep ignoring him. As soon as the doors open, we leave the train. Again, I've been in many weird and uncomfortable situations, but the fact that he was literally so close to us with his perverted smile, his excited eyes, and excited, you know what. Yeah. I'm glad we were able to get away from him safely. Thankfully, he didn't follow us. My girlfriend and I were thrifting at Goodwill recently, and she went to go look at some clothes in front of the mirror. I stayed by the cart probably 15 feet away and kept looking at clothes. I looked over at her and noticed a bald, pudgy guy with a son that looked to be about 5 years old behind her. He had his phone pointed towards her, and I really don't want to think that this guy was taking pictures of my girlfriend's ass, so I kept watching. He acts like he's looking for toys with his son for a second. Then when she turns around again, he takes his phone out and points it at her. I immediately get filled with so much rage and walk over to him. I ask him if he's taking some pictures, and he says, "Yeah, of my son. Isn't he cute?" I say, "No, he isn't. You're taking pictures of something else." He said he wasn't. I said, "Show me your camera roll," and he said he didn't have to. I told him I really don't want to smash your phone and beat you in front of your child. Then he started deleting the pictures while his hands were shaking, and I made him go to his recently deleted folder and permanently remove them. Then I called him a piece of shit and to never do that again. I really regret not whooping his ass though. I've been super angry at the thought of him doing that to other people, and I want to make him suffer. I live in a relatively walkable area of a city, and recently this guy's been coming to our house and leaving things in the porch basket we use to receive packages. We caught him on the Ring camera twice, and have since bought the Ring paid plan so we could watch the videos back. The first time we left a pouch of weed and papers. The weed was sealed, and the papers were not. We thought it was a promotion for the Dab Lounge across the street, but probably not. Mind you, weed is not legal in my state, but there are obvious loopholes. The second time, he returned within 30 minutes of the first, and left a handful of Pokemon cards and a page torn out of an old journal filled with nonsense ramblings. He came back for a third time today, 5 days after the first and second, and left a bowl, like for weed, and the packaging for a dog muzzle. We were unable to watch the video back this time, but he came up to the porch smiling, put the bowl in the basket, then sat down to read the newspaper flyer someone had left on our doorstep. He then added the muzzle packaging and left. I'm not sure if this sub is supposed to be for advice or not, but what the hell do you do in this situation? I don't know if calling the police would help anything since he hasn't exactly done anything. I was around 8 years old when I was playing cricket in my street with kids my age. It's a very common thing in India for kids to play in the middle of the street. It was my turn to bat, and the batman's wicket was in such a way where it faced directly to the entrance of the home in a cross section of 3 streets. And this home was filled with Middle Eastern people who seemed to be Iranians. While I took the bat and went on to play, I missed the first ball, and while I was waiting for the next ball, I heard a huge rock falling next to me. I turned back thinking it was the other kids just pulling my leg, but then I see a huge boulder falling towards me, and this is when I freaked out and started running, followed by other kids. Whilst we were running, we see some other Middle Eastern group of men approaching the home, and one of them got on their bike and held some cylinder thing in their mouth and pulled it out, and it was a fucking dagger. The men inside the home resumed with their throwing at these men, while these men were trying to walk inside the home, and having some people give them cover by throwing rocks at the people in the home. The neighbors around also were shouting at these people, asking why these guys were doing this, and the owner of the home lived next to the house and called the cops. They arrived in no time and held the dudes that they could, while my parents put me in my home and locked it. All I remember is the cops came and assured the neighbors that they were safe. However, to this day we don't know why they fought like that, and the cops didn't reveal the reason why. But the guy with the dagger, let's not meet again. For context, I live with my girlfriend. In the last month, her and I are the only people that I know of that have been in my car. We live in an apartment complex right off the highway. Apartment won't add more parking despite not having enough, so sometimes we have to park right off the highway with no one around. I've been worried that might make it a higher risk for my car getting broken into, but we live in a decent area, so I don't think about it that much. Anyway, Saturday night, me and my lady get back from hanging out with some friends. I brought my backpack over, so I went to the back seat to get it and noticed a red Craftsman power drill sitting under my seat. I grabbed it assuming my girlfriend had put it there, but she didn't recognize it. My dad and bro had come over for a project a few weeks ago, so I thought that they maybe placed it there. But after reaching out, they as well have never seen this drill before. I'll keep this last part short, but because of what I've already mentioned, I'm always checking my phone to make sure I remember to lock my car. I can see if it's locked on the app. The Wednesday or Thursday before, however, I'd woken up and noticed I left my car unlocked all night. Didn't notice anything out of the ordinary. Am I reaching here? What else could it be? Why would someone put a drill in my car and leave? Forgot to add, drill seemed like it was full battery when I found it. This happened about 5 years ago. I randomly just felt like I wanted to share this with someone. I also hope this can help other people in similar situations. I had just gotten out of a 2-year-long relationship, living in a city I moved to for my then boyfriend. After he left, I felt lonely and heartbroken. I was stuck in the apartment we shared. I downloaded Tinder to chat to guys as a way of coping with the breakup. There, I matched with this guy. He was about 4 years older than me. He was extremely handsome and charming. He was very much into fitness and had an amazing body. After talking for a few days, he asked to meet, so we did. He came over to my house and I was immediately attracted to him. He was a bad boy, the kind I usually fall for. But he was also sweet in the way that he talked to me. He kept complimenting me and doing sweet stuff for me. After a few days of meeting, we ended up having sex, and honestly, it was the best sex I've ever had. I felt this intense chemistry between us. We started hanging out and having sex a lot. At the time, I did smoke weed a lot. I know he smoked too, and did some other drugs. I didn't really care much at the time. Eventually, he ended up asking me to hang out pretty much every day, begging me to come over because he missed me. When I told him I was too tired, he would bribe me with stuff, like saying he would give me massages, weed, dinner, romantic things, give me the best night, etc. He didn't like it when I told him no. He would sometimes get angry, send a bunch of messages just pleading for me to come over. After every time I had been to his house, he would shower me with love via messages. He was so romantic, saying I made him feel so amazing, that there was something special about me, and that he loved being with me. He would often shower me with compliments, but then get angry when I said I didn't have time to hang out with him. One time when I was at his house, he got a phone call from someone. After he hung up, he told me I had to go upstairs and hide because his baby mama was coming over. He didn't want her to see me because she was crazy. He had told me some crazy stuff she had apparently done. I believed him. He was very convincing. I believe this happened twice. Now I know I should have seen the red flags. I probably did to some extent, but I didn't care much. I kept hanging out a lot with him even though I figured that he was heavy on drugs, like coke and speed. One day, I was at his house and we had sex. I had smoked a lot and he was on coke and probably some other stuff. He wanted to have sex again, but got frustrated that he couldn't get it up. He got mad and kind of blamed it on me for not being firm enough on the grip. He kind of yelled at me, "Squeeze harder," and he just kept getting more frustrated. I felt uncomfortable and wanted to leave, but he wanted me to stay. He tried to continue, but it didn't work. I was extremely uncomfortable and felt embarrassed. After a while, I told him I wanted to leave. He then told me to give him back the weed he gave me, as in his mind, it was payment for me being with him. I honestly felt so pissed, so I grabbed my stuff and walked out the door. He followed me. At first, he walked calmly about 30 meters behind me, begging me to stay with him, asking where I was going. I kept walking and saying no. He then ran towards me. I picked up my phone to call a friend of mine because I could tell that he was getting aggressive. I turned around and saw him literally tear his shirt open and stomping towards me. He grabbed the phone out of my hands, then kicked me in the stomach so hard that I fell into a ditch. He then smashed my phone to the ground and then told me, "You're done." I thought he was going to beat me up, but then it looked like he was actually trying to contain himself for a second and just turned around and left. I was mortified by what he had done. I ran away, shaking. I can't even remember how I got home, but I somehow did. I was able to borrow a phone from someone else and call my friend. He came over. I had bruises on my stomach and legs, and I had no phone. I also called the police using my friend's phone and told them that I wanted to press charges. A few days later, he messaged me saying that I tried to steal from him, that I took advantage of him just to get some weed. A few hours later, he texted me saying sorry. A few more hours, he texted me asking what had happened to me yesterday. Then a week later, he found out that I had reported him to the police. He was mad. He said he couldn't believe I reported him. Then he told me that he would give me 2 new phones or whatever I wanted if I withdrew the report. That he wouldn't contact me anymore if I just did it. He just didn't want to get in trouble and didn't want to lose his daughter. I didn't answer. Then he sent me another message fabricating the whole story of what happened that night. He kept harassing me for weeks with messages. Some days he was begging us to get back together or be friends, bribing me. Other days he was accusing me of random stuff, calling me names, etc., and that he had a great lawyer, that he would report me to the police for stuff I had never actually done. He kept acting like a smartass, saying that he would beat me in court. It all just became big chaos. After a few months, there was a trial. I couldn't attend physically, so I testified via a phone call. I was questioned about our relationship and the incident that night. He lied, made up stories about me, but no one believed him. As the trial was done, I received all the papers in the mail. I was shocked when I read it. He had previously been charged with violence and rape towards his ex. Apparently, there was also an incident where he forced his ex-girlfriend to touch him while multiple other men watched and videotaped her. There were other girls too that had experienced similar things. Stuff like robbery, weapons, fights, violence, and torture. You name it. He had been in jail multiple times. I had no idea I was dealing with such a dangerous man. I'm pretty sure he is a psychopath. He has no understanding of what he has done. The sick part is, I recently came across a post of him on Facebook. Apparently, he is pretty popular with women lately on Snapchat and Instagram. He posts stuff about his life, wanting about being beaten up by random men, being tortured, robbed, etc. That people followed him with guns. I have learned the reason why he keeps getting beaten up by people is because they know what he has done. He posted pictures of himself in the hospital to make people feel bad for him. And they do. He makes women feel sorry for him. He says people lie and make up stories about him, and he gains pity. He then posts all the sweet replies and messages girls send him, saying stuff like he feels so grateful for all the support. He's extremely good at manipulating people. I honestly feel lucky I got away at the time I did, and that it didn't escalate any further. I checked his Facebook and apparently he has a girlfriend now. I pray he doesn't hurt her in any way. The Smiling Man. I'm aware that that title sounds like a horror movie or creepypasta, and if I hadn't lived it, I would think it was. This is one of many stories I have from working the night shift at a laundromat in a bad area, and is definitely the freakiest. So for some context, my mom took a job years ago at a local laundromat because she knew the owner and needed extra money. I was around 10 when she got the job, and she allowed me to come with her because she'd give me a little allowance for helping her do small tasks. I ended up going with her every night for years, and as I got older, I mainly went there to make sure that my mom was safe because I worried about her. We'd regularly deal with angry customers refusing to leave, most of which were drunk or high, and would have to call the police a few times. My mom was always worried about me tagging along, but I insisted, and to this day I still can't say I regret it. A lot of good came out of it, mainly work experience, and that made up for how intense it could be. I have a lot of interesting stories from that time, but this one takes the cake for the most horrifying, and it took place when I was about 12. Being the young and dumb kid I was, I designated myself the job of chasing off people when it was closing time. We would have people parking behind the building pretty regularly, so I'd walk to the side of the building and start yelling that they were now trespassing, and I would call the cops if they didn't leave. I feel this was important to bring up because I now realize I'll let any shady person hanging around the building at night know of my presence, and that's a dangerous thing to do when you're a 12-year-old girl. I was blissfully unaware that anything could happen to me until one night when we showed up to find the door lock had been broken. My mom had unlocked the building that morning, so it wasn't like this was a break-in attempt since it had been unlocked all day. We were a bit shaken up, but my mom texted her boss to let him know and just told me to tell her if I saw anyone pull up. After about 30 minutes, I finished my few tasks and sat down to draw on my sketchbook. I had barely sat down for a few minutes when I heard the door swing open, which startled me because normally people just knock when they see the very obvious close sign. My mom noticed it too and yelled that we were closed. I heard an older man's voice respond, explaining that he had just came in to use our drink machine. We normally let people in to use our snack and drink machines, so my mom told him he had a few minutes and went back into the closet to grab something. I was sat about 7 feet away from the drink machine, so I heard him walk up, but didn't really pay too much attention to him. I continued to draw until I started getting this feeling that someone was watching me, and when I realized I didn't hear the guy put any money into the drink machine, I nervously glanced to my left and saw a tall man in his mid-60s staring right at me with a big smile on his face. I jumped a little, but forced an awkward smile back at him and directed my attention back to my drawing. As soon as I did this, I heard what sounded like shuffling, and when I looked over again, he was closer. I didn't know what to do, so I tried to just not look at him, but every time I would look away, he would shuffle closer, his body still facing the drink machine, but his neck craned in my direction, and he wouldn't stop smiling and staring. I began shaking and panicking, and my eyes were darting back and forth between him and the closet door while I tried to plan a fast escape. I went to reach for the knife in my bag because I couldn't even imagine this man's intentions, and quickly realized that it was not there. I had left my knife at home when I needed it the most, and I was petrified. I decided to just stare back at him, despite being terrified and trembling violently, and after what felt like an eternity, he suddenly broke eye contact and yelled to my mom to have a good night before turning around and walking out. Relief hit me instantly, and I tried to calm myself down after what just happened. I thought I was finally safe and started to get up to splash some water on my face when I saw him sit down on the bench outside. Panic and dread hit me like a brick and I sprinted to the closet to hide. I filled my mom in on everything, and she told me to run to the car and that she would get between me and him with pepper spray if needed. I did as she told me and ran to the car, and as I passed him, he stood up and began walking towards the car. My mom yelled at him to get away from her car, and his reaction was to try to calmly start a conversation about the make and model of the car while staring right at me. She ignored him, hopped in the car, locked us in, and started backing up as quickly as she could. I ducked down in my seat, but could still see him standing there, and I know he could see me because I watched as he lifted his hand and waved goodbye before walking around the back of the building, disappearing into the darkness. I felt sick. I couldn't sleep that night. I never dared to set foot anywhere near that building again. So I guess that was a lesson learned. Creepy old smiling man. Let's not meet again. It was summer break, and we, my family, didn't go on any trips, unlike every break. I was 8 years old and my younger sister was 3. We were playing along with other kids who lived in the same building as us, just on different floors. The building is not exactly an apartment building, it's more of a multi-story house. The front gate is a bit further from there, and the only entrance and exit of the building. So, since we were downstairs and playing, anybody who would enter or exit the building would be visible to us, and we would greet them because every tenant knows us, and we know them, as well as their family members who might visit them. A new person visiting a tenant is rare, but not impossible. Right adjacent to the big entrance gate is a small old style window with a grill, but has a small opening at the bottom. We were all playing, but then I got tired and sat on one of the chairs placed in a porch-like place. Not sure what exactly to call it, to be honest. From where the window thingy falls on my right side, and I could see it as well as the gate clearly. I was just looking out when I noticed a man staring at the gate. So basically, he was able to look at my sister and friends through it. It concerned me when I realized that he wasn't even trying to look away and was just staring at them blankly. I turned around from where I was sitting to signal my friends to move to the other side, away from his sight, which she didn't understand. Frustrated, I turned back and was about to stand up when my gaze fell on the guy, and he was now staring at me. My body froze, and I could feel the fear creeping up on me. I couldn't move. I don't know why I stared back at him, and suddenly he started smiling. And when I say smiling, he was full on grinning from ear to ear. That scared the soul out of me, and I mustered some courage, got up and ran towards my friends. I didn't tell them anything, and just asked them to go upstairs with me, which thankfully they did without questioning. I didn't tell anything about this to my parents because I thought they would stop me from going downstairs to play. The next day, we came again to play, and I looked through the window just to make sure he wasn't there. Fortunately, he wasn't, or so I thought. 15 minutes in, I spot this guy again. He was just standing there in the very same spot staring at us, at me. I tried to play it cool because my friends knew nothing about him, but I couldn't do it for long, and we went back up again. From what I can remember, this happened about 3 to 4 days, and now my friends were starting to complain how I didn't let them play, and that they had to come back up earlier than they were supposed to. On the 4th or 5th day, I don't remember correctly, I made up my mind not to pay attention to him and just focus on playing. We were playing cricket and I was batting. I hit the ball hard, causing it to go over the gate, which was a normal thing. And as per rules, it made us, the one responsible, must fetch the ball. My heart started beating because I could see his grin getting wider and creepier. He went towards the ball on the road and picked it up. He then held out his hand, gesturing me to come take it. I was scared shitless at this point, but I had to go, so I did. As soon as I reached to take the ball from his hand, he bent over, coming close to my ear, and his words still ring clearly in my ears till this day. I'm a good man. Look at the window when you go inside. I'll leave something for you. This is a rough translation in English. It sounded much worse. That sent shivers down my spine, and I ran with the speed of light. After we were done playing, I saw him sliding a piece of paper from the little opening. He then looked at me, grinned, and waved goodbye. I grabbed the paper and opened it. He had written his number and asked me to call him at 2 o'clock sharp in the afternoon, and that he knew my parents would be asleep by that time. It was also written that if I didn't do it, my friends' lives would be in danger. As an 8-year-old, I didn't know any better, so I called him through my mother's phone. He picked up the call, but I didn't have the courage to say anything, so I was silent. He said, "You're a good girl. You should come stay with me. Come outside. I'm waiting to pick you up." Because I live upstairs, I went to the balcony and he was actually standing next to the gate, looking directly at me, waving and smiling. I couldn't contain it anymore, so I started crying and disconnected the call. I ran inside and bawled my eyes out in my room. Thankfully, my mother didn't wake up and I cried it all out. I didn't go out for the next few weeks and everyone kept asking about it. I still didn't tell them though. The guy stopped coming too. I don't remember the time he stopped coming, but he did, and I was relieved. Eventually, this experience started fading and I grew up. Fast forward 10 years. I'm 18 and my mother asked me to buy some snacks. I took my sister and went out. The shop I had to go to was at the end of the road, several houses away, so not far. I was standing in a queue when I felt uncomfortable because of the man standing behind me, because he kept pushing me. Annoyed, I looked back at him, only to realize it was the same man. My face went pale, and I could hear my heart throbbing in my throat. I tried not to panic and calm myself down, telling myself that he couldn't do anything in public. There were tons of people there, and that gave me a sense of security. As soon as my order came, I took out my wallet hastily to pay, but he beat me to it. The owner looked at him weirdly and then at me. Because I was a regular there, and he was seeing me with this man for the first time. I paid for it anyway, and the owner politely asked him to take his money back. I gave the bag to my sister and asked her to go home and inform my mom that the man was following us. Just in case he attacks, I'll have a backing and she'll be safe too. Our house is within vision range of the shop, so I waited for her to get inside. And now, it was my turn to go home. As soon as I stepped out, the man followed me and said something like, "You're a beautiful lady now, let's catch up." I kept walking and walking, but now that we were far from the shop, he started speed walking and I had to walk faster. I could feel goosebumps all over my body. I started running and I could see him catching up to my speed when the owner called for him loudly, saying that some of the money was still on the counter and asking him to come back, which gave me enough time to get inside and lock the gate. I haven't seen him since that day, and it's been 2 years. I'm 20 right now, and I hope I never meet him anywhere in the future. I hope I never see him again, and I don't know why it's instilled a paranoia in me, and I dread seeing him when I turn 28. Edit. I told my mom everything after that. Because my dad lives in another city for work, I didn't tell him since it would make him hella worried and possibly affect his work. My distant uncle is a local cop. He's quite close and trustworthy. We tried finding the creepy guy after that, but couldn't. He literally vanished in thin air. We asked the shop owner about him, but he said the guy came back, took his money, and went away. Nobody else paid enough attention to this guy, so we couldn't find anything. I go to college by public transport, so I have to walk around 1 kilometer to reach the stop. I take the other road, which is opposite to the road that leads to the shop. It takes longer, but I feel better at least. Not once have I seen that guy or felt anything creepy since then, which is a relief. But again, I'm kind of paranoid every time I step out, though I do carry pepper spray and a sharp keychain with me at all times. About moving out, we can't afford that just yet. Possibly after I complete my degree, which still has 3 years left. I'm a 25-year-old non-binary person renting a 4-bedroom house. One of my roommates is my boyfriend, and the other is my best friend of 10 years. We'll call her Tracy. We have been looking for a new roommate, and because of the way this situation turned out, we have determined that I'm no longer in charge of looking for roommates because I'm not judgmental enough and am known to ignore red flags. I will start at the beginning, which is the house showing. So, our new prospective roommate showed up to the house showing and introduced himself. He definitely seemed strange at first, but I wrote it off as him just being eccentric. The main red flag was that at some point he randomly said something to the effect of, "And I will not bring meth into your house because I'm not on meth. I hate them and I see them as a scourge on this entire country." I didn't ask, so I was immediately weirded out, but my boyfriend and the roommate who was moving out also met the guy, and they both thought that apart from that, he seemed normal. He didn't look like a stereotypical meth head. His skin was clear, and he was kind of chubby. We thought that maybe he thought I was a meth head, because I'm a little bit scary. I have green hair, a 1-gauge septum, and 6 facial piercings. In addition, my roommate who was moving out turned out to be hiding a cat, which made the whole house smell like cat piss, which I've been told is what meth smells like. Also, the town that this guy is coming from is known for meth and crack, and he seemed to be explicitly trying to stay away from that town. So I thought maybe he was afraid of ending up in a situation where he was living with drug addicts and was trying to suss us out that way. Giving him the benefit of the doubt was my first mistake. Tracy and I were both wigged out about the entire thing, but we were kind of desperate for a roommate, and all the other people responding to the listing were not great fits, or were even sketchier than this guy, so we let him move in. Skip to the move-in date. He brings the old man to help him move his stuff. He then proceeds to make the old man move all the things by himself up the stairs while he sits there, including a refrigerator, by himself. New guy signs the lease. Immediately after signing the lease, he informs us that he did not include himself using a real name and proceeds to tell us his real name. This man was not transgender, so the only reason I could think of why he initially gave us a fake name is probably so he could avoid us running a background check. After this, I had to go to work. Throughout my shift, Tracy sends me a message that this guy is weird, but her responses are vague. I didn't find out what happened until I got home. Here's what she told me. New guy goes to the bar after signing the lease and comes back after being kicked out before 9 p.m. The bar he went to is a biker bar that is notorious for being rowdy. It's hard to get kicked out of there. You pretty much have to do something heinous, or you have to be creeping on a woman in order to get kicked out. When he comes back, he's drunk off his ass and says, the men must have been intimidated by me. Sounds to me like he was creeping. Before this, I had told the new guy that our landlord is coming the next day to fix some things in the house. When the new guy came home, Tracy reminded him that the landlord was coming the next day. He became extremely angry to the point where he's flailing his arms around, and she thought that he was going to start breaking things. Tracy was so uncomfortable that she almost went to wake up my boyfriend in the other room. Eventually, the new guy calmed down. However, there is a beanbag chair next to the couch, and Tracy is sitting on the beanbag with her legs slung over the armrest of the couch. At first, the new guy sat on the couch. He begins to read off poetry that he wrote to her for an entire hour and a half, all of which is literally just streams of consciousness about how he wants all junkies to die. Afterwards, he started telling her how beautiful she was over and over again, and literally lays his head down between her legs. She's trying to ignore him, and he won't stop asking her if she fell asleep. Every time she moves, he gets closer. Then, he starts inviting her to his room for a beer. Eventually, she gets up and goes into her room at 11 p.m. This man harassed her for 2 entire hours. I thought that was everything, but then she tells me that she sent the guy's picture to her mom, who sent the picture to everyone she knows from the town that he previously was living in. It turned out that he had been stalking Tracy's aunt for an entire year, and that he's banned from the bar she works at because he's threatened to kidnap her. She literally has to be escorted out, not only by workers but customers, to her car sometimes. So we tell our landlord. Luckily, our lease hadn't been finalized yet, so he agreed to kick him out. I call my mom to come over, and Tracy calls her brother for backup just in case things go south. Our landlord shows up and essentially tells him that he needs to leave and doesn't even let the new guy get a word in. The new guy starts getting agitated and aggressive, so we call the cops and several officers show up. Told the guy that he had no legal standing as there was no lease. He introduced himself to us with a fake name, and he hadn't even been there for 24 hours, and that he had to get out. The guy had to beg his sister to come pick him up, and she was so unwilling to do that she didn't agree until he offered to pay her $200. It's a 20-minute ride to where he was going. He left most of his stuff on our porch. When we went into his room, it smelled like cigarettes, and there was an empty pack on the floor, including not one or two, but 7 empty Dr. Pepper cans, and garbage everywhere, even crusty socks. The entire situation had me so stressed out that I didn't even notice that he had left a pair of pissy shorts in the middle of the house main hallway, and that's the first thing you see when you walk into the house. They were there for an entire day, when he knew the landlord was coming. They were sitting there when he left. I picked them up with a glove and put them on the porch for him to retrieve, but who knows if and when he did retrieve those things, because he came back earlier, touched his things like he was going to take them, and then just immediately left. All I have to say is that I'm really relieved that we caught on to this before the lease was finalized, because it easily could have turned into a situation where me and Tracy were being sexually assaulted, or worse. Thanks for listening to my story. I'm a 36-year-old male. My parents divorced when I was 4 or 5 years old. During and after the divorce, my brother, let's call him Chris, my mom, and I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment townhouse. Now, this was not the nice townhouse you may imagine. It was a complete shithole per se. They were older, built in the 1960s. This was in the 1990s, and is in a rougher part of town. Something a single mother with 2 kids could swing. The layout to the apartment is important to the story, so bear with me. When you walk in the front door, the kitchen is immediately to your left, and there's a short entrance hallway in front of you. The kitchen is an open countertop area that looks into the dining spot for a table, and a split-level living room den area that also had a sliding glass door that leads to the backyard. No fence for privacy, where there was a rather sad and sparse playground. In the hallway entrance again, on the right is a staircase that leads up to all of our bedrooms. One day after school, my brother and I are out playing in the backyard on the playground, doing our kid stuff, when my mom told us she wanted to go check the mail. The mailboxes for the apartments are located in the front entrance, which is on the opposite side of the complex from us. Naturally, me being 5 and Chris 9, my mom didn't want to leave us alone, especially since it was about to get dark outside. We came inside and got ready to leave. On the way out, I remember my mom asking Chris if he had closed and locked the sliding glass door. Chris said he had. Cut to when we were back from the mailroom. It's maybe been about 20 to 30 minutes max. It's hard to recall fully. My mom unlocks the apartment door. I'm lingering in the car for some reason or other. Chris doesn't notice I'm not in the apartment yet, and on the stairs leading to the bedroom on the right, he sees some feet disappear to the top of the landing, as if someone were running to hide. Thinking it was me, he didn't think anything was off. Chris goes into the kitchen, and I actually go upstairs directly into our bedroom to get ready for bed in the bathroom. My mom is at the table in the dining room area, near the split-level living area downstairs. While I'm completely clueless getting ready for bed in the bathroom, Chris from downstairs keeps hearing some noises walking around my mom's bedroom. Now, I had a bad habit at that age for going through people's stuff, not maliciously. I was barely 5, just curiosity. And Chris, thinking that I was being a nosy bastard going through all of my mom's jewelry, etc., runs upstairs to catch me in the act and get me in trouble. Chris runs up the stairs, sprints across the hallway to my mom's bedroom, and throws himself stomach first on the bed. When he looks up, he sees a tall, slender man with a bright green goblin latex Halloween mask on, and is holding a large knife he swiped from the kitchen. My brother sits silently in shock as the man in the mask raises a finger to his mouth, indicating for him to be quiet. And in the true form of my brother, he screamed bloody murder for my mom. At this point, I heard things going on, but I have no idea and am not aware of what's happening. I've got into my big oversized sleep shirt and am going downstairs to get a glass of milk before bed. When Chris screamed, the man ran downstairs and encountered my mom, who immediately jumped into action. Our baseball gear is near the living room, and my mom grabbed the bat and started fighting the man in our house while he's taking swipes at her with a knife. I first noticed what's happening when I came downstairs to the kitchen, pulled up a stool to reach the counter to pour a glass of milk, and that's when I see over the bar the guy push my mom off the step into the split-level living room, landing on her back. She starts swinging the bat wildly, trying to make contact with it, and she does. I'm glued to the image, truly frozen in place, not scared, just so young that I can't fully process what I'm seeing. The man finally runs towards the front door, which is right next to the kitchen. I'm mid-pouring my glass of milk, frozen, milk continuing to spill all over the counter and floor. He stops and turns directly to me, and in that green goblin mask with a knife, screams a primal, deep sound of rage and frustration, and then slams the door so hard the whole place shakes. I continue standing on the stool, pouring milk everywhere, frozen for what could have been seconds, but felt so long. I don't remember what happened after that, but all the parts that I have relayed are very clear to me. Moral of the story, lock your doors, and don't just assume that you did. And dear man in the goblin mask, let's not meet again. I was about 15 or 16, and my older brother that went to the same high school as me would drive us to school most days of the week. When our parents stopped wanting to get up early since we both had zero period that began at 7 a.m. One day on the way to school, we stopped at a donut shop that was in a sort of remote part of town on a stretch of the highway. It was still kind of dark outside before 6:30 a.m. This was in the late 90s, before it was common for teenagers to have their own cell phones, so I didn't have a way to call or text. This shop had nothing around it except for trees and a stretch of empty land. The parking lot was too big for how small this place was. He didn't park us in the very front spot by the door, and to this day I have no idea why he didn't. He parked us about a row and a half from the front door and walked in. No one was at the counter, so I watched him wait for service. While he was waiting, my eyes wandered and panned suddenly to a man's face staring daggers at me from one of the tables in the shop. It was very startling. It was like in movies when they look through binoculars and see someone staring at them through a scope. I immediately looked away and down because it freaked me out. At first I thought maybe the man was just tired and just kind of spacing out because of how early it was. But I still felt his eyes on me after a few minutes, and although I fought myself to look up, I glanced up and he had a creepy smile on his face. He had short bobbed hair, like a dude would have in the 70s. I looked at my brother, and it felt like an eternity as he picked out donuts. He had turned around once, and I tried to get his attention, but he turned back around and kept choosing. When my brother was talking to the cashier, I noticed the man at the table get up. He never took his eyes off of me, and I remember my heart beating hard in my chest as I looked down since I couldn't think of anything else to do. I hoped that he would just walk away, but out of the corner of my eye I noticed he was approaching the truck. My first thought was to reach over and honk the horn as loud as I could, but he was already about one stride away from the truck driver's side, and I noticed then that the door hadn't auto-locked. It was the kind that had a little pop-up button lock. I only had seconds to choose to lock the door or honk the horn, so I practically leaped over, and I can remember slapping down the lock button. Not but 2 or 3 seconds later, the man pulled on the door handle. He turned and walked away, but then turned again and tried to pull harder. I then honked the horn to get attention, but I saw that my brother had walked to the other side of the counter, out of view. After I honked the second time, the guy walked off past the car, across the street, where it was a bit wooded before the highway resumed. When my brother came back, he asked me why I was honking and being impatient because it was still early and we wouldn't be late. After I told him that some creep tried to get in, he drove around the area, but no one was around since it had been 5 or more minutes before he got to the car. Creepy smiley zoned out donut shop guy. That's not me.